So when we did day 1 notes, we looked at how to multiply and divide monomials. Remember, monomials just means one term. So we have one term timesing another term, or one term dividing another term. Today we're going to look at the situation where we're only looking at multiplication, but it's a monomial and a polynomial. So taking a monomial and timesing something that has more than one term in it. And most of the stuff we look at here are going to be binomials, so just 2 terms. Okay? But you got to learn a new math rule. And this math rule, you actually were tested on your MSS assessment. And there was one of the categories, it said distributive property. Right? We hadn't talked about it yet, but you're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it today and see how it works. All right. So before I get into today's notes, let's go for a little spot. Let's go in the bottom corner if you want to write this out. Let's go like this. Oh, come on, pen. Let's go like this, just in the bottom corner. Not gonna need too much space here. In elementary school, grade 7, grade 8, you're used to these kind of questions like this. 3 and 2 plus 4 in brackets. Now, if asked you to evaluate, what would you do? Abby?
How is 2 plus 4, which should be 6.
Yep.
And how times it by 3.
Times it by 6, that gives you 6. Then we have the 3 sitting there. And 3 times 6 gives us 18. Right? BEDMAS rules. Right? You've been doing it for quite a few years now. Now the problem with polynomials is, like if we execute the BEDMAS rules, we get stuck at the very first step. So if you look at the bracket right here, and the first step is to combine the stuff in the brackets. But we can't. We can't combine these two things. They're unlike terms. This one has an x, this is a number. We can't add and subtract these, right? So we're stuck. How do we even proceed past the first step? This is the nice part of math, is no longer are you stuck down this one path. This alternate path, as long as you're doing everything mathematically correct, you can take more than one path to get your answer. And I'll show you the alternate path today. So, going back to this question here is, okay, let's focus on not what's in the bracket. Because with polynomials, you can't add the stuff inside the bracket because they're unlike terms. Let's focus on this 3. So this 3 is saying, hey, I'm multiplying this bracket and everything inside that bracket. So let's do that calculation first instead of last. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this 3, I'm going to multiply it to this 2. And I get 3 times 2, and I get 6. Then I'm going to take this 3, I'm going to multiply it to whatever else is in the bracket. And I get 3 times positive 4, and I get 12. And this is positive 12, so I'm going to write down plus 12. Then I go, oh, 6 plus 12, I get 18. The same number. Okay. There's no reason to do this when you had just normal questions like this. That's why you're not shown in lower grades. There's no reason to do that. It's extra steps. Right? However, with polynomials, you can't do this, so we need to work around. Right? So this is called the distributive property. We take this 3 from the outside of this bracket and we distribute it to everything inside that bracket. That's where the name comes from, distribute, pass along. All right, so do some examples with that. All right, so we're going to use the distributive property. Distributive property. All right, this is what we take that monomial and we multiply it to every single term in that other bracket, right? So we're calling it a polynomial, right? It might be a binomial, it might be a trinomial, right? Just a whole bunch of terms linked together, right? So we're going to start off with the method I sort of did before. It's called the rainbow method. When you look at your page, you can have a whole bunch of arrows that sort of like looks like rainbows over your page, right? I'm going to take this term on the outside and multiply it to everything on the inside of this bracket. because we can't add x and 3. They're unlike terms. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to multiply it to the first term. I'm going to draw this arrow. That's what this arrow means. I'm multiplying these two things together. And I'm going to write out that calculation. I have 2x, and I'm going to use a dot set of times, because I also have too many x's sitting there. I'm going to write that calculation, right? And then we do that, perform that calculation. Yes, like it's just 2x2, right? So when we multiply the coefficients. This is the 2 and this is the 1, so it just stays the 2. With the variables, we just add the exponents. 1 and 1, right? Add them up, gives us 2. Okay? And then we do the other one. So I'm going to do another rainbow. I'm going to draw this and switch colors. And I'm going to write this calculation out. I have a 2x this times 3. And now we perform this calculation. What's 2x times 3? Just 6x, right? Now, just like in the first chapter here, right? We have two terms. We need a sign between these two terms. What sign should go here? Abby? Plus, because when we did this previous calculation here, this was a positive 6. So that's me a plus sign there. If we did the calculation and ended up being a negative number, it would have been a negative sign. Okay? So let's do this again. Now, it doesn't matter what side that monomial is on. It can be on the left side. It could be on the right-hand side. And we just do the same thing. Just now the arrows just go from the other side up and over. So I'm going to take this. I'm not allowed to add these things together. They're unlike terms. So I'm going to distribute the monomial to everything inside this bracket. And it doesn't matter which term you do first, right? I usually just do the one that's closest, right? So I'll do this one here. It makes it a little bit easier. I'll do this one first, right? Then the other one, arrow can go over top. So I have 4.2 n times what number?
7.
No, just like the previous chapter, negative 7. You got to take that sign with it. Take this sign with it. So times negative 7. All right? So now we do that calculation. What number do we get? Negative 29. Yeah, that's right. Excellent. Negative 29.4. And what about the variable? What would that be? Just an n. It has nothing to combine with, just like before. It just stays n. Okay? Now, we done the first term. Now we got to do the second term. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to push it to the second term. And I'm going to write that calculation out. So I got 4.2 n times 2n. And what did we get this time?
8.4.
Yeah, 8.4. 4.2 times 2 is 8.4. What about the n squared? We're multiplying n, so we add the exponents. 1 and 1 gives us a 2. Okay, so now we need sign separating this term from this term. Is it going to be a plus sign or a minus sign?
Plus. There's positive.
I've heard it's going to be a positive number. I heard both answers. This is 4.2 times positive 2. So there's a positive 8.4. So that'll be a plus sign. So that answer is 100% correct. The only problem with it, it's not from highest degree to lowest degree. So that's the optional step from last chapter. You can do, right? So this is, you don't have to write it this order. If you guys, some of you guys are going to find this chapter easy again. So I want you to stretch your thinking and just write it from highest degree to lowest degree, right? Optional, this step. It's the same as this. This is degree 2, that's degree 1, right? So reword it that way. You can get good at it, that you'll just end up doing the calculation of the highest degree first, just to save yourself steps, right? Eventually. But that's it, all right? Okay, now, to make it a little bit harder, we can have fractions, right? So, but we just write out the calculation. It's not that much harder, but now we're just dealing with fractions. So we have our monomial, and I'm going to take it, I'm going to multiply it to the first thing in the bracket. I'm going to write this thing out. So the first one is -4. I'm going to write this as a nicer fraction. I'm going to take the x and put it into the numerator like that. Right? Then I'm going to write down the first thing it's touching here. So that's a 6x. I'm going to write that as a fraction, 6x over 1. So just like we did last day. Right? Okay. So now you have two fractions multiplying. Right? What we did is we multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms together, then we look to simplify this way. Right? So putting the tops together, going this way, what is our new numerator? Yeah. I love how quickly that came. That's great. This is complicated. All right? Okay, what's in the denominator? The 3. 3 times 1? 3. Okay. So, one term on the top, one term on the bottom. Now we look to simplify this way. Can 3 fit into 24? Our portion of 3 fit into 24? Yes. 8 times. So we get -8x squared. Okay? So we've done the first rainbow. Brought it down to a nice single term. A lot more work. We've done the first rainbow. Now we got to do the second rainbow. I take this and do it to the next one. All right? So I'm going to go write it out, -4x over 3. I'm going to write the second fraction. What do I write for my second fraction? Abby?
-12 over 1.
Yeah. So you take that sign with it. So -12 over 1. Right? So now, we got our two fractions. We're going to put them together on the top. We multiply this way. What do we get? 48x. Positive or negative? Positive, because two negatives made a positive. What do we get on the bottom? Just 3. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, now we simplify this way. 16. Right? 48 divided by 3 is 16. And the variable. What happened to the variable? Does it disappear? Does it change? Does it stay the same? It's just x. It has nothing to combine with. Okay, so now we have two terms. We need a sign between this. Plus, because this was a positive 16. That's it. So now, this is still very, very fresh, right? But what do I expect by this end of this chapter? I don't need you. I don't need you to show me this step, right? At the grade 9 level, when you get comfortable with this method, I don't need you to show me this step. I'm expecting you to go from here straight to there. We'll practice that with the next one, right? Some of you guys may not be there yet. So with this one, like this is by the end of this unit, which is going to come by fast, all right? We're going to be doing this without that middle step shown. So you can take this number here. I'm going to draw my arrow. This times this. In our head, we're going to picture the calculation. Taking the coefficients, multiplying the coefficients together. -9. Then we take the variables, and Blake, you said x2. That's what I expect to see. I don't need the in-between stuff. If you need it, write it down. If you find yourself making a lot of mistakes, write that step down. You're going to avoid the mistakes. All right? Then we do the next one. I go like this, and we do that calculation in our head. So coefficient with coefficient, or constant this time. No. Positive 18, -3, and -6 makes positive 18. Plus 18x. And that's all you need to show. All right? But if you're making mistakes, show the other stuff until you get comfortable. There is another method which we can use a table, which I typically don't do with the stuff kind of questions we're doing right now. But when the problems get more complicated, a table model helps organize your thoughts and you're going to make less mistakes. I don't think I'm going to talk about that today though, right? Because we've got like 12 minutes left in class And I think the questions that are left might be a good review before you guys do the assignment next day. But I do want to touch on one thing though. So on this, we need a little spot here. You don't need to write this down. I'll just write it on the screen here, right? So last unit, we had questions like this. 3a plus 4, right, plus, say, negative 2a plus 4, like this, right? Or let's change that to a 6, actually. I'll change that to a 6. And I said, hey, if it's a plus sign, I said, you don't need to change anything. Oh, just add the a's together. 3a and negative 2a makes 1a. You add the numbers. 4 and 6 makes 10. All right? We just ignored those brackets and just did it like we did in the day 2 notes. But when I changed it, that sign to a minus sign, I had you change this bracket to the opposite. You guys remember that? Right? So we use the phrase opposite. What we were actually doing is this distribution property. This isn't a subtraction sign. This is actually a minus 1 sitting in front of this bracket. Right? And that minus 1 multiplies everything inside this bracket. So that's negative 1 times that. It'll be 2a, positive 2a. Negative 1 times this will be negative 6. It became the opposite. We didn't need to talk about it at that point. And some of you guys are wondering, why did it do what it did? This is the reason. There is a negative 1 sitting in front. And we didn't have to do that in this situation. Negative 2a plus 6, because that number sitting in front was a positive 1. And if you multiply anything by positive 1, it just doesn't change. But over here was a negative 1, so that it had to flip its signs everywhere. All right, so next year, and I think I do have like a challenge question, what's going to happen is you'll have like a number here and a number here. And you just have to multiply the numbers through, right? We're not there yet, but some of you guys can look at that like, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, we're not going to do that, but that's what's basically all that's going on. Okay, so that's it. We'll stop right there, and we'll do the other ones as a warm.